But thank you all for being with us on the show today, and what a blessing this organization is. And even when we were sitting in the room in the back, oh my goodness, the stories you were telling were so inspirational. Will each one of you introduce yourselves and then tell what your role is with Sustainable Liberia and kind of explain what it is?
Okay. Excuse me, my name is Linda Flagler, and I'm on the board for Sustainable Liberia. And I've had 3 trips there, and looking forward to planning more adventures. I'm a teacher, retired teacher, and that was my role each time, was to help train the teachers in these little villages.
It's wonderful.
My name is Caroline Sanders. I went on my first trip to Liberia back in June. My main role was to take pictures, but I really just got to love on lots of little kids.
Oh, wonderful.
My name is Michael Vallone. I actually work here at the station. And the station was gracious enough to let me leave for 2 weeks to experience Liberia. And my role is to do photography as well. Yeah.
You know, this is one thing that I will say is I think it's wonderful that you as young people have experienced this, because we see the passion in your eyes for Liberia. Can you tell us, Linda, can you tell us how it all began? Why Liberia? I mean, it's a small country. How did the Lord lead you down there?
Well, I have to give the credit to Jesse Tugbadoya. He grew up in a tiny village of Vallone in Liberia, and he was kidnapped as a little boy from his village and sold to people in the capital city of Monrovia. And he was treated very poorly, and eventually he ran away, was adopted by a woman who worked in a hospital there. And she paid for his education, and he finally came to the United States and went to Mercer University and felt God's call to go back to his village and start a school there. So the name of the organization in the beginning was Vallone Development Alliance, because it started in the little town of Vallone.
Now, why did they change the name?
It's just recently been changed to Sustainable Liberia, because we have expanded from the little village of Vallone to other places. Banzu is one of the main villages that we focus on, and Painesville, right outside of Monrovia, we have ministry there too.
Have you pretty much covered the whole country though, or is it just that one? So you have a lot of work to do.
We have a lot of work to do.
That's why you're here tonight,
yes.
Am I right? So we can get the word out. Caroline, I know that when those children saw you and that beautiful hair and that beautiful smile, they immediately loved you. Tell us what led you to Liberia.
I actually had been to West Africa before. I studied abroad in college. I was an econ major, and so this was a trip about economic development. And one thing that we didn't really get to do on that trip was to spend time with people. We were taking classes, and so I just have a heart for West Africa. And we had just an open invitation at our church to come to this meeting about this cocoa plant they were starting in Liberia, and that's where I met Miss Linda. And her heart for these people and for this ministry just really tugged me, and I was like, I have to go see what it's about.
And your heart is still there.
Oh, yeah, of
yes.
course.
Tell them about when the first time they saw you.
Oh, the first time a bunch of the little kids saw me, they tried to rub the freckles off my arm because they thought they were dirt, and then they wouldn't go away.
I love that. And then, Michael, of course, what led you to Liberia?
A lot of the same reasons. I just finished a perspectives course. It's a 15-week course that is provided at different churches that basically just leads you through what is God's mission and plan. It's always been the same. It's always been Plan A. And then pretty much about a month after finishing that course, I heard about they're building a cocoa processing plant in Liberia. I was like, wow, that's like, I love chocolate, so that's cool. And then, wow, you can actually use chocolate to maybe reach people. And so, Linda was Linda led our group and just told us, you can come and see what we're doing there. And kind of chocolate kind of led me to Liberia again.
Chocolate can do a lot of things. Let me tell you, yes, that's the answer to a lot of our problems, chocolate. The
Amen.
Lord sent us chocolate.
Amen.
But let me ask you this. When you talk about the things that you're doing there, tell us about the work. What are some of the things that you're doing there in the village?
Well, I'll have to talk about the teacher-related things, because I am a retired teacher, and I went to help the teachers. Michael can talk about the cocoa business, I'm sure. But there is a little school in the village of Bonsu and in Vallone, and the teachers there have very poor training. Most of them have little more than a 6th grade education themselves, and they are trying to teach kids in classes of 100 and 150 kids. So we saw the primitive practices they were using, and we felt like we could bring vocabulary cards and strategies that we use here in the United States, and they could be adapted actually to what they have there. And so that was our job, was to help train the teachers.
Would you have ever thought when you were teaching in the classroom that you chose to retire and at a very young age? And look at this, and then God gives you another, really another calling.
Another passion,
I mean,
absolutely.
I guess the calling's the same. He just takes us down different
That's
roads.
right. When I retired, that was when they were starting this trip from our church, and so I was able to go.
That's amazing. And another thing I want to say is when you leave after you've been there, don't you go for like 3 weeks at a time?
Depends on the trip.
Can you see a huge improvement when you leave? Can you see that they are really picking up
the first few trips, not as much as we would have liked.
Yeah.
The last time we stayed 3 weeks, the teachers stayed 3 weeks, and when we go back in March, we're really praying we see a huge difference.
That's wonderful. And then, of course, what was your role, Caroline, when you were there? Did you work with the children as well?
I got to do a little bit of everything. I was kind of behind the camera most of the time, but while I was there, we were doing computer training, we were starting the cocoa plant, the construction, we had nurses who were working in the local clinic, and of course the teachers. I got to actually spend a lot of time in the clinic. My mom came on the trip with me, and she's a nurse. So I spent a lot of time with her and just getting to be around. A lot of it was moms bringing their sick kids to the clinic, and just to see the sacrifices that they were making. They were giving up a day, maybe 2 days worth of labor to bring a child who needed medicine, who just needed to be seen by a doctor. Just the sacrifices and the love that they had was just really, really powerful.
What do you think are some of the challenges there in Liberia, Michael? What do you think? I know there are a lot of challenges, but what are some of the challenges that you face?
Well, they got out of a pretty bad civil war years back, and then they got through the Ebola crisis. But they came together a lot because of those things. Like God uses our, struggles. They grew closer together. They nominated and they elected a woman, president that got the Nobel Peace Prize for what she did to turn it around. So now it's the challenges. I feel like is now continuing down that path of transformation. Where we were, they've heard the gospel, and they had well water, that kind of thing. But I felt like the next challenge is the next step, like the discipleship.
One thing about it, they love America, am I right? And is it 85% of the country of Liberia is Christian, predominantly Christian, is that right? So how do you, when you say that she got a Nobel Prize, then how did she do, what were the things that she did to turn it around? Like, give us an example. Like, are you talking about education? Like, is that what you're talking about when she said turn it around? Like, how did she turn something so devastating around?
A lot of prayer. I know, and she also, it was a lot of women that came together into the streets and started requesting, change, and it worked.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Both Muslim and Christian women brought about the end of the Civil War that was about 13 years. So she being a woman and them, working together, I think brought a lot of peace and tranquility to a country that was so war-torn.
Oh, don't you know that she was a breath of fresh air? Mm-hmm. Because they were probably so down, but that's the grace of God. And when people like you all go and shine the light there, it makes such a difference. You also said some of the challenges. I mean, did you say you're 7 miles from the equator? Want to tell us how hot?
That's how hot it is. You want to talk about the rainy and dry season? It's not pleasant.
It's really tough. It's really hot. It's really humid. There's no electricity in the village. There's no running water. There's no convenient bathroom. We talked a lot about giving up or the sacrifices that we had made, just kind of giving up the comfort and the amenities that we are so accustomed to. But you have to think about these people live here all the time. They face these things on a daily basis, and they are so joyful. Like, that's one thing that you can't escape. As soon as you kind of hit the end of this dirt road and end up in this village, is just the joy and the hospitality. We think we as Southerners are hospitable. Got nothing. There's just the love that they have for you, and they want you to be part of their family too.
And they want you to come. Don't they invite you into their homes? And I think that's one thing that you all were talking about earlier, is they have so much joy, and they may have so little materially, but they have so much joy inside. And you know what? Don't we all need to go down there? You know, to have a perspective on life.
Yes, ma'am.
I know all of you that are at home, I can agree. I mean, we have so much here, but when you go there and see, you know, that they're so joyful and thankful for what they do have. And that's going into the to the season of Thanksgiving, and how blessed we are. Tell us the future. What do you see for the future of Liberia?
Well, you know, we can only speak for the places where we've been, but in the village, Banzu, where we've concentrated our efforts, we have built a cocoa drying facility. During the war, the cocoa facilities were destroyed, and that's one way that they've been able to make money. But while we were there, and before then, the cocoa pods would just rot on the ground. Because there's no way to process it. And so our organization was able to build a facility in Banzu where they're now drying cocoa, and they have a buyer. And we hope that through that, the village will be able to become more sustainable. We're hoping that money can be used to help sponsor teachers or scholarships for kids who have graduated from the elementary school but can't afford to go to the high school. The villagers will decide how to use that money, but we're really excited about that. And then I was hoping Michael would share something that we've done in the Painesville community.
So, like, part of the Sustainable Liberia, the ministry that we're helping, they part of it is also to, you know, sponsor or business development. So, like, the cocoa processing plant is one of them, but there's also 3 women that have started a restaurant, actually a training restaurant in a city closer to the capital. And that not only they cook for people and they're hospitable, but they also train women like Jennifer in your first guest, that are in, like, maybe the sex trafficking industry, or they're just you know, not able to sustain themselves. They can come and train at this restaurant. It's actually called the Coal Pot Queens, because they cook out of a coal pot, and they can make anything out of a coal pot. Amazing. And they've all been trained, you know, trained as well. But they're bringing in these ladies and teaching them a skill, so they can actually not only cook for themselves and their family, but then maybe even start their own restaurant. So it's just more sustainable, you know.
Well, and that builds their confidence and their faith in knowing, hey, you know what? I can do this. I can do this through Christ.
Exactly.
And one thing that I love is the fact that you're going down there to teach them how to read, how to do things better, but most of all, you teach them about Jesus.
That's right.
And that's the main thing.
Amen.
And I was going to ask, what is your favorite thing that you've learned? Is there just one thing? I know you've learned a lot of things, but what's the main thing that you've learned from your trips to Liberia?
Well, I think one of the things was when you go to a third world country and you know there's a lot of poverty, I think sometimes we feel like the people there are not very intelligent. And I think Michael's going to share something about that in a minute, but we found out that, you know, they have an intelligence and a resourcefulness that's not book learning.
Yeah.
It's life survival. Mm-hmm. And that was one thing that I learned more than anything was how you can take very little education and make a wonderful, happy life for yourself. You may not have much food. You may have to walk 10 miles to the nearest market. You may not have shoes on your feet, but you're surviving. And you're able to do that because They've done it for centuries without us.
You know, you being a teacher, I know probably the first time you went, you thought, oh, I want to teach them so much, but I bet you came back and you learned a lot.
Oh my goodness, we all learned a
They're
lot,
beautiful
absolutely.
people.
One of the
Yes.
things I learned was how little things I really need to be happy.
Yes,
You know, when we in the
that's
United
good.
States have so much, I'm
Right.
going to say stuff. We have stuff that we think is important. When you go to Liberia or other third world countries where they have so little, you realize that the things that we think are so important
Amen.
are not important at
Nothing.
all. And the joy, as Caroline mentioned, the joy they have in their hearts with nothing.
Yeah.
They have maybe, if they're lucky, they have a straw mat to sleep on
Yeah.
and a pot to cook in. And then they eat with their fingers out of the pot. So they have nothing, but they're happy.
And they're happy. That's all they need.
And they love the Lord. They do. They want to know more about Him. They want to understand what the Bible has to say and teach them. They have a hunger for that.
Yeah. What are some of the things, we're wrapping this up, but what did you take away from this experience?
I got to see one of my favorite verses kind of come to life. There's a part of Psalm 65 that just talks about the awesome deeds of God and how people at the end of the earth will be in awe of His signs, and the coming and the going of the day will like sing His praises. And literally being at the end of the earth, or the end of this dirt road in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by people who love you and don't even know you, was just amazing.
And that's the love of Christ.
It is. It really
Amen.
is.
I mean, totally want to add to that because, like, you don't even realize, but you have like nephews and nieces and cousins around the world you've never even met, and because they love Jesus like you do, so they're already part of your family. You just haven't met them yet. So it's like that's the way it felt. Like I mean, they look at you like, you know, like a long lost family. So yeah.
Michael, I love the picture that you were showing us in the green room where you were talking with the children. Was that your first day?
That was like the first 10 minutes. They were already
And
holding your hands.
They were your best
looking.
friends.
Yeah, there's unconditional. Yeah.
I can tell that you all have been changed, and your hearts are there, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful sight to see, and it's so interesting. Now, I know that there could be some that are listening and watching, and they're saying, "How can I get involved?" So, what about your website? Where can people go? And maybe you at home would like to donate to Sustainable Liberia. This is such a great cause, and going into the Thanksgiving season, the Christmas season, you can be a part of this organization by just simply giving and being a supporter of this ministry. So what is your website that they could go on and maybe donate?
www.sustainableliberia.com.
And you know what? Maybe there's some retired teachers out there that
would
may
love
want to
it.
go on the next trip, and
Absolutely.
you're leaving out in March. We pray many blessings. We thank God for His favor. I love in the scripture where it says, "For the righteous, He'll shield the righteous with favor," and we pray that God will continue to give you that favor as you go back to Liberia. We're praying for you all, and I mean that when we say that. Am I right? All you folks at home, remember to keep these folks, Sustainable Liberia, this organization, in your prayers.